Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You have found the Dark Oak and the Oaktober Fest, a special edition. Well, Cynthia, we're still here. We're still here after the big storm.
We are still here, and I will tell you, at least at my house, there were a few hours where I wasn't sure.
Well, good. Well, we're going to get into all of that. We have a really fun Oaktober case today. I'm going to tell you about Bella in the Wych Elm.
Oh, I literally just got chills just from the name alone. Okay.
Yeah.
You're
going to love it.
Ooh. Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month through our charity called the Branch of Hope Foundation, a portion of our proceeds from our Patreon and sponsorships goes to a nonprofit related to the first episode of the month. Stay tuned until the end of this episode or check out our website, thedarkoak.com, for more details.
Is tune still a thing? I mean, obviously it was tuning like radios, but can you tune on a podcast?
Well, I don't know. I use it as a figure of speech. Here's the thing, Stephanie. I age myself just by existing. I try to be young. I try to be cool. I try to be hip. And I just proved right there that I'm not.
I think it's really cute. Let's talk about the storm. So Hurricane Milton just came directly over us. And Cynthia and I now have power again. How'd it go at your house?
We did okay. So the worst thing about these storms and natural disasters for me is that because my husband's a first responder, he's always on call. So for 10 years, I've been facing every storm, every natural disaster, on my own with my kids, which now is just, old hat and what I do. But that's always the hardest part. And then the nature of where he works, he's over on the coast, which was a little scary.
Yeah.
But
you were on the quote good coast.
He was on the East Coast, which is often not where you want to be, but this time, I would have not been able to sleep at all if he'd been on the West Coast. But we fared well, trees down and stuff like that. Our neighborhood took it pretty rough. We had a couple houses with trees come down on them. One house flooded. It was pretty rough. No power for I don't remember how long. Couple days, maybe?
I think 3 days, because you got yours on the same day that I got mine, or maybe the day after. Three days. I think we had 3 days with no power.
Yeah, it was
and no internet. It's weird. Our internet and power were out at the same time, and they both came back on the same time.
Oh, no, see, we stayed without internet for several days. In fact, it's still wonky at my house.
Oh,
the internet has still, coming and going, but cannot complain in the scheme of things.
I know. Yeah, everybody's been asking me how my animals did. They did fantastic. We have pretty permanent structures for the chickens, the ducks, the turkeys, the goats. Our pigs, though, don't have the best structure. They're just more kind of like tent city, if you will, which is wonderful for the majority of the day. They stay pretty close up to our house because they're, special and bougie. So we had a special little area that we put them in the garage, so they had like a little fence up that had a bunch of hay. We gave them a bunch of treats. I did have a little concern that they were just gonna push the fence right over, because you cannot stop a pig. If a pig wants to go somewhere, they're gonna go wherever they want to go. So I kept opening the door, making sure that they weren't being naughty, because if they got out, they would just have to be roaming around the garage, which I really didn't want them to do, but they were so sweet. They came in, they ate their dinner, they kind of looked around for a little while, and then they just buried themselves under the hay and just went right to sleep and slept all night through the storm. It made me so happy. I was so proud of them.
Well, I have to say, your pigs are like literal angels. They are so sweet. So
Sweet
that does not
piggies.
surprise me at all. They are just precious. So
sweet little French toast and little peaches.
French toast especially, he's just really has my heart. So I would have expected nothing less than for them to just burrow in their little hay stack and be good.
Yeah, everybody did fantastic. We didn't lose a single animal. So,
which honestly, given the hundreds, truly hundreds of animals you have, and the damage of the storm, I'm actually surprised. So when I got the update that everybody made it through, I was really pleasantly not surprised, but maybe a little. I was relieved for you.
Well, you know what? It really shows that my anxious hurricane planning paid off.
Good job, Steph.
Yeah,
Good.
great. I mean, I didn't sleep for 3 days, but the animals did amazing. Well, all that said, Cynthia and I fared very well. We are still lifting up prayers and thoughts and well wishes for those in the rest of Florida that are not doing as well as we did. I know there's some even in our community. Again, they're dealing with trees in their houses, that are dealing with the loss of power, that are dealing with the loss of water. There's a lot of wells.
Yes.
There are a lot of wells around us. So not everybody has a lot, city water. So if your well goes out, you don't have running water. We are keeping you all in our thoughts and prayers, and the people of North Carolina as well. We are thinking of you. We care about you. You're important. If there's anything that we can do, give us a little shout.
Yes.
We're happy to do it. Then I will also say today's episode and next week's episode, we're supposed to be on location. Unfortunately, those locations no longer exist.
Which is more sad for them than for us.
It is very sad for them. So anyway, we are back in the pod lab for this week and next week. But you know what? We are still happy to be here. We're happy to be part of this podcast. We're happy to be in Oaktober Fest, and maybe we'll plan something in the spring. You know what? These haunted hotels are not actually going away. I mean, I say the hotels aren't there anymore, but they are. They're just not in a place where they're inhabitable.
Right. We went long enough with no electricity, so
yeah.
We don't need to be in a haunted place with no electricity.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh. Yeah, that would be super creepy. Nope, not doing that. So, you know what? In Oaktober Fest fashion, I'm going to start out with a campfire story. And then we're going to get into who put Bella in the Wych Elm, which it sounds like a fairy tale. I mean, it's
a scary one.
Scary, like a Brothers Grimm tale. Yeah, like a Brothers Grimm type.
Yes.
But it is an actual real true crime story and pretty wily. So campfire stories, we always start our Oaktober Fest specials with a campfire story. This is just a little something that you can certainly tell around a campfire. You can also tell around the dinner table. You can tell as a little bedtime story for your kiddos. Just a little something to get you in the spooky mood. I have a pretty short campfire story for today, so this will probably just be a minute. If you don't want campfire story for whatever reason, just fast forward. Fast forward. Stay tuned.
Okay, now you're totally dating yourself. Fast forward.
Skip ahead 1 minute and you'll get to where you want to be, and I'll tell you all about Bella. So without further ado, here is today's campfire story. A young man walking home looked behind him and was a little freaked out. There was a coffin walking about 20 paces behind him. He picked up the pace, but the coffin did too. Soon the coffin was only about 10 steps behind him. He could see his house, so he started to jog, then running, but the coffin kept up. He ran to the front door, and the coffin was right behind him. He went through the door and shut it behind him, but the coffin was busting through. The young man ran up the stairs as the coffin was coming through the door, chasing him. He ran into the bathroom, but the coffin was right behind him. He locked the door, but the coffin was breaking it down. There was nowhere to run. He looked around the bathroom, but there was nothing to help. The coffin was almost through the door. The young man looked to the medicine cabinet and searched through it, and it was empty, except for cough drops. There was nothing else he could do. He threw the cough drops at the coffin, and then the coffin stopped.
I knew that's where this was going.
You didn't know.
I did.
You didn't know.
I knew it had something to do with coffin, because you kept saying the coffin and the coffin and the coffin. And then as soon as you said medicine cabinet, I was like, oh, I know where this is going.
You know what? Is there anything better than a good pun?
According to my sister, no. Those are her favorite kind of jokes.
Mine too.
Okay.
It drives Barton absolutely insane. I mean, and I'll get on a roll and then I just can't stop, and he'll just leave the room sometimes with me just giggling to myself.
So you should do one of those Halloween costumes that's like a pun.
I could. You know, I felt like an 80s revival. I kind of want to do like a Rainbow Bright costume.
Oh, do that. That's amazing.
Yeah. But I do like the puns too.
Yeah.
I'll have to come up with something fun. Okay, Bella and the Wych Elm. Are you familiar with this case?
I have heard it covered on other podcasts, but all I remember is like the bare bones basics. So it will be new to me.
All right. Well, I'm going to take you back to England in April of 1943. Now, World War II was in full swing at this point, and the UK had been fighting the war for 4 years and had already survived German Blitz right there on their own soil. I think that's almost unimaginable for us as Americans to think about a war happening on our homeland.
It's absolutely terrifying. Like, it's unimaginable.
Unimaginable. Yeah, truly. So for this, you kind of got to get yourself in that mindset. So they had survived the German Blitz, which was a period of just over 8 months when the Germans continued mass air attacks nightly against industrial targets, towns, cities, hospitals, schools, like dropping bombs on everyone and everything. And the country was now in the throes of periodic air raids, extreme food rations, and a depleted workforce, and truly an uncertain future. Now we know the end result of the war, but at this point, it wasn't certain. It was for this reason that 4 boys found themselves trespassing on an aristocrat's field looking for a treasured food source of birds' eggs. On April 8th, 1943, local boys Robert Hart, Thomas Willetts, Bob Farmer, and Fred Payne wandered into the Hagley Woods, the estate that belonged to Lord Cobham near Wychbury Hill, when they came across a large wych elm. The wych elm before them was ancient, with a gnarled base and long stretched out branches growing in every direction. To the boys, this tree looked like the perfect place to look for their treasure. Young Bob Farmer climbed into the creepy limbs of the elm tree and reached into the hollow of the tree to retrieve what he thought was a ripe egg. But he was mistaken. The terror crossed his face when he realized he had discovered a woman's head.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
Fearing retribution from trespassing on private property and uncovering a potential murder, the boys made a pact not to speak about this to anyone. However, the youngest boy, Tom Willetts, could not keep the secret for long, and he confessed to his father what they had found in the Hagley Woods. Police descended on the property and found, in the hollow of a massive tree trunk, a woman's skeletal remains. She was hidden in the hollow so sufficiently that only the top of her skull was visible. This is just the most insane visual to me.
Yes.
So my husband Barton and I, one of our favorite movies is Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
The one with Johnny Depp.
Yes.
And yes.
I mean, and
it makes me think of that tree in the end. I don't know if you remember where like the headless horseman jumps out. That's what I'm picturing is those heads like in the tree.
Okay. Well, you know what? Andy and I were going to have a movie at home date night, and it's been years since I've watched that one. So maybe that's the one.
Cheeky and like weirdly gory, but not really. Like it's just I think it's just a fun movie. And Barton does not like scary things, but this is the one that he's like, okay, that's fun. Like it's a fun scary.
I know I've seen it.
I assume some of your questions are going to be about the tree itself.
Well, okay, so yes, I didn't want to jump the gun, but how did she get in there? Did it grow up around her? Like, okay.
I got you, girl. Well, first of all, let me tell you about a wych elm, because not just for you, but for all of our listeners that may not be botanists. Let me talk about the wych elm for just a moment.
Yes, please do.
Firstly, it's spelled W-Y-C-H, not W-I-T-C-H.
Okay.
So it is spelled a little differently. It's not automatically like this is a witch, like dark magic tree.
Okay.
And they can be large trees, and they're often used as hedges. They're found throughout Europe, but are found primarily in Scotland. Wych elms used to be associated with melancholy and death, probably because the trees can just drop dead branches without warning.
Oh,
because I'm going to show you a picture of one in a minute, and I want to get your reaction.
Okay.
And as a side note, elm wood was also the preferred choice for coffins because it's strong and durable with a tight twisted grain that is also water resistant. So there's a lot of dark details kind of wrapped up in this tree. Now I'm going to show you the picture of the actual tree that this woman was found in.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
I would like you to describe this tree.
Oh, no.
How do you even describe this thing?
Okay, this is not at all what I was envisioning. It literally looks like a gnarly ball. It doesn't even look like a tree to me. It looks like a gnarly ball of just branches that make up almost a solid.
Yeah,
A big round solid.
Yeah, it's in April, so the leaves had not yet come back. So this is like kind of over winter. But yeah, it's if someone was to say this was a witch, like WTCH tree, I would be like, well, yeah.
It's very scary. It's not pretty.
It almost looks like hair flying out. Like the branches look like hair. Like it's wild looking.
Yeah, like there's no clear trunk.
Right.
It's just a bunch of branches that, again, it looks impenetrable, almost like a solid. And then the closer you get to the top, the branches start to get taller and longer and kind of fan out more like you would expect a tree to look. But this is not, ew. This is terrifying just of itself. If I just walked up to this tree, I'd be, what is that?
It's ominous looking.
Yeah. I certainly don't know how a body got in there.
Well, no one really does, but I'm going to tell you what their best guess is. So now you have that visual in your mind. I feel like that makes a difference to the rest of the story.
Listeners, you have to stop right now and Google the Wych Elm, because I'm telling you, this is not at all what I was envisioning. I was envisioning kind of what our logo looks like. Just like.
Right. This is much scarier.
This is horrific.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Can you imagine being a boy, thinking you're going to find some eggs, finding this tree, which first of all would have been intimidating, going up to the tree and then finding a skull?
I mean, no to all of that.
No to all of it. No, thank you.
No, I can see when you said he stuck his hand in a hole looking for an egg.
Yeah.
I was like, they normally build their nest on branches. So this kind of helps clarify that, because he could stick his hand in anywhere and potentially find
And I think
nest.
there are some birds that would definitely, like, they love to nest in like the hollows of trees. And so I think that's what he was thinking. But it's intimidating.
This is something. Yeah. Please look at that before you continue on with the episode.
It's gross,
That's
right?
not what I was expecting. I was
No.
expecting a beautiful, creepy tree.
Oh, it's creepy. Not
no,
beautiful.
That's not even pretty.
No.
It looks like a thorn, a giant, like one of those round,
like those briars.
Yeah. It just looks like a big giant thorn.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So back to our story.
I'm disgusted.
I'm disgusted.
I am a little extra today.
You did warn me. Okay, so back to our story about this poor woman that was found in this terrible looking tree. After a considerable amount of time, investigators were finally able to retrieve her body out of the tree.
I will say, this would be a great place to hide a body.
It's a fantastic.
Yeah.
I talk about that. Yeah. The fit was so tight that investigators still don't know exactly how the body was made to even fit into the tree hollow. These particular trees can be very, very old too. I was reading about one particular wych elm that was over 800 years old. It was sadly taken out by disease in 2022.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so just 2 years ago. Now, when this woman's corpse was recovered from this particular tree, it was discovered that some flesh and lanky, limp hair still clung to the skull. Outside of a few scraps of clothing and a low-quality gold band, which may or may not have been a wedding band, the tree held few clues. Due to the state of her remains, authorities concluded that the woman had likely died 18 months before she was discovered, which would have placed her death around October of 1941. Dr. John Lund, the forensic biologist who examined the woman's body, believes she must have been placed inside the tree very soon after her death because rigor mortis would have made it impossible to get her into such an awkward spot.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. The medical examiner, Professor James Webster, agreed, saying, quote, "I cannot imagine a woman accidentally slipping in there. Neither do I think it reasonable for a woman to crawl into that space to commit suicide. It was an excellent place for the concealment of a murder, and I think it indicates local knowledge. Someone knew about that tree."
Sure, yeah. Now I can see, I guess if you were looking for a place to hide, that would be a good one, but it looked like it would be very difficult to get into. Like you would be concealed, I guess is what I mean. If you were, say, running from somebody in the forest and needed a place to hide,
Sure.
if you could get it, but I still don't see how you could even
I
get
don't
into the tree.
I don't see how you could. Both men pretty much said there's no way we can imagine somebody trying to squeeze in there, even to hide.
But wouldn't that be easier than squeezing a dead body in?
I guess it depends on how bad you want to hide a body, I suppose.
Ugh.
Yeah, both men, though, both the medical examiner and the forensic biologist, believe that whoever murdered her, because they think this was a murder, because they don't think suicide was probable.
Yeah.
They think that whoever murdered her must have murdered her close to that tree, because they would have had to put her in the tree so quickly after her death.
Okay.
Like, she basically had to still be warm in order to get her in the tree.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All the questions. That's part of the mystery. I guess that's the mystery.
That's the mystery.
And they were unable to determine a cause of death because of the state of the body.
There's some theories, but correct.
Okay.
We don't know for sure. Her disintegrated clothing was said to be of low quality and consist of a dark blue striped knitted woolen cardigan, a cloth skirt with a peach-colored taffeta underskirt or like a petticoat, like under her skirt, a light blue belt, blue crepe-soled shoes, and an inexpensive rolled gold band. Her skull also held several clues, specifically her jaw and teeth. Her jaw showed peculiar abnormalities, having recently had teeth removed, and her two front teeth were very noticeably crossed, one lapping over the other.
Oh, so that's distinctive.
She was also found to have a piece of peach-colored taffeta consistent with her petticoat shoved into her mouth, suggesting she may have been suffocated or gagged by a killer. However, there soon arose some debate over this conclusion because the four boys who discovered the woman's body said they had wrapped some cloth around a stick and wedged it into her mouth in order to place the skull back in the tree. Because remember, they had said, we aren't going to tell anybody, so they tried to like shove her back in. So we're not really sure.
Okay.
Most think that the taffeta was already in there.
Okay.
But there is a chance that it wasn't. So they don't want to just hang on that.
Sure.
It was determined that she was about 5 foot tall and around 35 years old. She might have also had a baby, but the evidence was not conclusive. So I guess there were some changes like in her pelvis, but they weren't exactly sure.
Okay, so not pregnant, but previously given
Exactly,
birth.
had previously given birth, right. The only additional evidence found at the scene was one of her hands, which they found a short distance away from the tree lying on the ground. It was the only piece of her body that was not in the tree. It's just a single hand.
Skeletal.
At this point, yes.
Oh, that's weird. So either it was separated at the time of her death. Could an animal have pulled it out of the tree, maybe?
It's possible, but the way she was wedged in there, it doesn't seem probable.
Weird.
Isn't that strange?
Her hand off?
I think that's strange.
That's very strange.
Yeah.
It's already a weird case, but this makes it way weirder.
Way weirder, exactly. Now, without a great deal of evidence, police pursued the lead of the woman's distinctive teeth. And when I say distinctive, I mean very distinctive. One laps almost completely over the other, like their two front teeth. Her two front teeth like, lap over each other. So this would have been something you would have noticed.
She should have been very recognizable if she was from around there.
Absolutely. So they started speaking to dentists because remember, it looked like she had also had a tooth pulled. So they weren't sure if this was something that would have been done at a dentist or if this was something kind of done in the field, if you will. But they were never able to find anyone that remembered seeing her particular jaw structure or teeth layout. They also tried to find any matches to her crepe-soled shoes, the blue shoes that she was wearing. They were traced back to the Waterfoot Company, which is in Lancashire, and investigators were able to find the owners of all but 6 pairs of these shoes that had been sold. The particular ones they weren't able to find were sold from a market stall in Dudley, which was a town approximately 11 miles from Birmingham, which is the closest town to Hagley Woods. But that, too, offered little insight. It's incredible that they tried.
That's pretty amazing detective work in the 40s.
I agree. They also compared the description of the victim's body to thousands of missing persons cases across the region, but officers could not find a match. And remember, because of the war, there were even more missing persons reports than they would normally have. And many of these missing people were believed to possibly just be lying under piles of rubble from the bombing, but they still had all these reports. So they went through thousands and thousands, but still weren't able to find a description that would fit this woman.
That kind of reminds me of one of our very first episodes ever, the Sneha Phillips case, where she went missing right in the middle of 9/11.
Yep.
So an already really difficult task of finding somebody was so affected by all these thousands of other people.
Yeah,
this would be a needle in a haystack.
Absolutely. So you have, again, thousands of missing people, and you also have limited resources.
Right.
Because at this point, everyone's actually fighting the war.
Which is going to take precedence.
So you have very few detectives even able to work the case. So the fact that they were able to follow the shoes, to me, I was like, okay, they're trying. Like, I actually give them props for doing that.
No, I'm really impressed.
Yeah. So again, and forensic work at that time, even if they had the knowledge, they don't have the capability to do that right now. They don't have the scientists. They don't have the research facilities. Everything's just going towards the war.
Wow. Yeah.
For months, there was no additional movement on the case. Partially, again, because there were no clues, but mostly because the town of Hagley was much more focused on the war effort. It wasn't until a year later that someone reminded Hagley of the wrong that had been done. On March 30th, 1944, chalk graffiti was found written on a building in the nearby Birmingham Fruit Market district on an abandoned building near Hagley Hall. The text read, "Who put Bella down the Wych Elm?"
What?
It was written a year after her body was found.
Wow.
And then there was a line underneath it, and then under it, it just said Hagley Wood.
So now we have a potential name.
A potential name.
And somebody's not letting this go.
And somebody's not letting this go. I don't know why this is creepy, but it is to me. The same day, in the same area, they found additional words on another building that just said Hagley Wood Bella. And the next day, they found the words, "Who put Lou Bella in the Wych Elm?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. According to the Evening Dispatch on March 30th, 1944, quote, "The writing was too high on the wall to have been done by boys, and the police are inclined to the view that this is the work of someone coming into the city early in the morning with farm produce." So originally everybody kind of thought maybe it was a hoax, right?
Well, my first thought was, okay, maybe one of these boys, because most people have probably moved on from this, quite frankly, especially with all going on. But the little boys who found her, they're never going to forget.
Right.
So that was my first thought, but we just ruled that out.
So if you ruled that out, then the question came, so you said somebody's not letting this go. I think they could go one of two ways. Is this the murderer?
Right.
Is this the person that did the wrong? Or was it possibly the loved one of this woman who knew her name? Not that the murderer couldn't have known her name, but you know what I'm saying? Maybe this is a loved one and they wanted to keep it in like the public consciousness.
Right.
And maybe it's someone, I don't know, there was a lot of tough circumstances. And so maybe they weren't able to come forward.
Because that would be my question there, would be why not come forward? But I can, think of many reasons why you may not.
Sure. Especially
in this when I put myself in this scenario.
Exactly. So whatever the reason, the graffiti did reinvigorate the investigation and gave detectives more clues. Like you said, now we have a name. It was either Lou Bella or Bella. Bella became the more adopted name. And so a new search was launched. Unfortunately, once again, though, the trail grew cold. They couldn't match the name with anybody that had disappeared around that time. It was another 10 years before a local journalist named Wilfred Byford Jones, using the pen name of Quaster, wrote a series of sensationalist articles about the tragedy in the woods, subsequently breathing new life into the case.
Wow, 10 years though.
A full 10 years. Now, in response to the publications, a woman who called herself Anna sent the local newspaper, Wolverhampton Express and Star, a letter saying, quote, "The one person who can give the answers is now beyond the jurisdiction of earthly courts." The only clues I can give you are that the person responsible for the crime died insane in 1942, and the victim was Dutch and arrived illegally in England around 1941. I have no wish to recall anymore.
Well, okay, a couple things. First of all, that could explain why nobody recognized her if she just, showed up.
Foreign, sure.
Right.
Also, this seems very ominous. I mean, this is not what you want to read.
No.
Now, hoping to get more answers, the police encouraged Anna to come forward and discuss the case. Now, based on police reports, it isn't clear if a meeting with this Anna ever actually took place, but we do know there was a report taken from a woman named Una Hainsworth, who many believe was Anna. At the time, she did say she was Anna, but there's no way to really confirm if she was or she wasn't. But she came forward, and her story was very similar to the words that were in this letter to the newspaper. Una told police her husband, Jack Maesop, had come home one evening in either March or April of 1941. She couldn't exactly remember, but he came home, quote, white and agitated. He told her he had joined a spy ring and was spending time with another spy by the name of Van Ralt at the Littleton Arms. They were also in the company of a, quote, Dutch piece, presumably Bella, who passed out in the car on their way home. Van Ralt apparently told Una's husband to drive to the woods. Supposedly, the pair stuck the woman in the hollow tree, believing she would come to her senses the next morning. But Bella never woke up, and Una's husband went insane, apparently haunted by the images of the woman in the Wych Elm. Una reported that he died in a mental hospital in 1942, a full year before Bella's body was discovered.
So they just put her there to keep her safe?
That's the story. This seemed like a plausible explanation to how she got there and how no one came forward saying she was missing. But unfortunately, there was no way to fact check any of this. It's just a story. And, this woman, it was 10 years after the fact, right? She basically had a strange husband who went insane, who died in a mental institution. And now she's coming forward saying, oh, he told me this story one time.
Right.
So it seems a little flimsy to say, yep, that's it. That's what happened.
Right.
So the case stayed open. With this idea of espionage and spy work, though, many started to ask if Bella was a spy herself or maybe involved in some kind of espionage, which is why no one has come forward.
Okay, now we're talking Somerton Man here.
A little bit. Now, she doesn't have as much strangeness around her as a Somerton Man, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely unsolved. As time rolled on, declassified MI5 files gave some weight to the spy theory.
Oh my goodness.
Files revealed information concerning a German spy named Joseph Jacobs, who was captured after breaking his ankle while parachuting into Cambridgeshire in 1941. After Jacob's arrest, a crease photo of the glamorous German actress and cabaret singer Clara Bowerly was found in his pocket. Jacobs told interrogators that Clara was his lover and that the Third Reich had recruited her as a spy. According to Jacobs, Clara had parachuted into the West Midlands in 1941. There were numerous munitions factories scattered across the Midlands at the time, and knowledge about these factories and locations would have been very valuable to England's enemies, so that part was definitely plausible. According to Jacobs, after she parachuted, though, Clara disappeared, and he was never able to make contact with her again. Joseph Jacobs was never able to shed any more light into Clara's fate as he was executed by firing squad on August 1941. Interestingly, he was the last man to be put to death in the Tower of London.
Oh, where Stephanie just visited. In case you missed us talking about that.
In BD.
She's an expert now.
Now, many wonder if perhaps Clara would have been the woman Una Mossop had mentioned. Remember the Dutch piece? Maybe she was Clara Bowerly. Maybe these two stories weren't two theories after all. Maybe they were one theory. However, Clara Bowerly was tall, around 5 feet 10
Mm.
inches, whereas Bella, as she's now called, was only 5 feet in height. For decades, though, many clung to the thought that Clara and Bella were one and the same. That is until 2016, so fairly recently, when it was discovered that Clara Bowerly had died in a Berlin hospital on December of 1942.
Okay, so it's not Clara.
Not Clara, but it doesn't mean that there wasn't another spy that she could have been. And this then leads us to the cult or witchcraft theory. Most of this theory stems from Bella's hand that was found so close to the tree, because it's such a weird detail. It's such a weird fact in the case.
It is, because to murder somebody is one thing. To cut off their hand could potentially be something to, I mean, that seems like,
It's strange.
yeah, I would just wonder, why did you cut off her hand if that's what happened? So it definitely takes a turn.
Well, now, to buy into this theory, you have to believe two things. Number one, you have to believe that the hand was actually severed and not that it was accidentally dropped. Not accidentally, but that like an animal didn't move it.
Right.
Or that it was displaced or just fell off in some manner.
And that's where my mind first went. My mind first went to, did a squirrel grab her hand, pull it out?
And we're not sure. We don't know.
We don't have exact answers. We just know that it would be the way she was crammed in there. It
would have been difficult.
It seems like her hand should have been with her body.
Correct. That's correct. The second thing that you have to believe is the location of the hand. The police statement reported that the hand was found approximately 13 paces away from the tree. And for those supporting the witchcraft theory, 13 paces is a really important clue. Now, I'm not sure how scientific 13 paces is, but again, it was reported as 13 paces. So for a lot, this number 13 has really like piqued their interest. So the fact that the hand was separated from the body and the fact that it was this 13 paces away from her body, they feel like that has some significance.
Okay.
The theory was brought forward by Margaret Murray in 1945, and she was an anthropologist and archaeologist at University College in London, and she specialized in the study of witchcraft. She believed that the severing of one hand was consistent with a ritual called the Hand of Glory. She referenced an ethnic group of nomads called the Romanis, or Romas, who practiced this particular ritual. Colloquially, the Romas are called gypsies. So if you hear them, there was roaming gypsies, these caravans that they would have. Many Romas consider the word gypsy to be kind of derogatory, though. So I'm going to refer to them as Romas. But just to give you an idea, it's the same people.
Okay.
The Roma believed if you cut the left hand off a dying criminal during their executions, like they're hanging from the gallows or something like that, or if the criminal in question is a murderer, whichever hand he did the killing, you have to cut off that hand. You now have the, quote, Hand of Glory in your possession. The Hand of Glory, once pickled in herbs, was believed to have magical powers. So if you were a thief yourself, the mere possession of the hand rendered sleeping occupants of a house into a deep trance. So you could rifle through their possessions without having to worry about getting caught. Also, it was a bit of like a shield. If you were being attacked, a Hand of Glory could freeze your attacker. It also protected the possessor from evil spirits, and treasure hunters believed the Hand of Glory could also lead them to buried treasure troves. So a lot going on
with this hand.
The
thing that sticks out to me, though, is it all seems to be you have to have the hand in your possession. This one's in the woods.
Like, why go to all this trouble and then leave the hand there? Right? Like,
right.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
But I see why she would have suggested the Hand of Glory.
Sure.
And if the hand had not been found with her, I think I would actually buy that more.
It would make more sense. It doesn't do a lot of good laying on the forest floor.
Fair enough. I hear you exactly. And as far as I've never found an explanation as to why it would still be there. There was another theory that if you left it there but put candles on it, it could have spiritual powers there too, but they never found anything like that. Like they didn't find any other like ritualistic artifacts or anything like that. But Murray also believed the placement of Bella's body in the tree was not a coincidence. Several pre-Christian European societies believe burying dead criminals inside trees trapped their spirit inside the tree, preventing their ghost from seeking revenge on the living. So again, maybe.
If you're superstitious, I buy that.
Right. There's also the fact that she was placed in a Wych Elm. I mean, it's spelled differently, but Murray thinks that's not an accident.
Well, for me, I think the significance of that particular tree might be because, again, if you look at the photo, like it's a miracle she was ever found, quite frankly.
I absolutely agree.
Whereas, the more traditional looking tree with a single trunk, first of all, you'd have to have a really big, opening to even put someone in, and then they're likely to be found, whereas this really would be a great place to conceal a body. So I feel like that would be the significance of this particular tree.
You think it's just more, it just made a good hiding spot.
Right. And the name,
coincidentally,
the name is just coincidence. Because I honestly think we're kind of stretching. Like, it's not the same witch. Like, it's witch and witch.
Exactly.
Like, we're kind of stretching it there.
I don't disagree with you at all. And I think it's somebody who probably just had experience in those woods. They happen to know this crazy gnarly tree had this big hole in it that they could probably fit a body in.
Right. And for me, so far, I'm leaning that the hand either was pulled out by an animal or something, or for whatever reason, whoever murdered her cut off her hand just to be mean to.
Right, as a form of torture.
I don't know that I'm buying the witchcraft thing so far. If so, they're beginner witches who didn't take the hand with them.
And even there's the idea of the eye for an eye, like maybe they stole something. Because I know in some cultures, I mean, you steal something, you get your hand cut off.
Right. But then that would be the punishment. It wouldn't be, we're going to cut off your hand. And then, well, I guess if they stuff you in the tree alive.
Ooh.
I mean,
I'm just like, it's funny. I would have not considered myself claustrophobic up until the last few years. And I feel like it's more and more like the idea of confined spaces gives me like real anxiety. So the idea of anybody being stuffed in this tree is just terrifying to me. I do not like it.
No, that would really, really be torture to actually like maim you and then put you
in this tree that you can never escape.
Right. And that could be done for all sorts of reasons. You slept with my husband and this is my revenge, or who knows, any evil person could do that to you.
Right. Now, kind of going with this witchcraft, not necessarily witchcraft, but kind of a cult. So let's just think cult type activity. Okay. In 1954, local papers reported on another similar killing. This murder was in the town of Long Compton, which was 15 miles from Lower Quinton. So it was actually some distance from Bella's resting place, but it's interesting just the same. The murder happened back in 1875, and the victim was an elderly woman named Anne Tennant, who was rumored to be a witch. She too was killed ritualistically, being pinned down to the ground with a pitchfork.
Oh, that's violent.
That's violent. Anne's killer was a man named James Haywood, and he was a man, by their words, not mine, but he was described as simple-minded or kind of like the village idiot, if you will.
Okay.
Haywood was tried for murder, but spent the rest of his life in an asylum. He claimed that he was a witch hunter and would kill more witches if ever let out. Now, because of Haywood's statements, many wondered what secret groups of witch hunters or Satanists or witches may be kind of living around them. Could he be part of a group? Or is he, again, just somebody that's kind of a little, in his own world?
He's just searching for something, and this is what he found.
Right. In February of 1945, she was found in 1943. They expect that she was killed in 1941. This story happened in 1945, very close to where Bella was found. A 74-year-old man named Charles Walton was brutally murdered while out doing agricultural work in Lower Quinton. While doing some groundskeeping, he was slashed and stabbed with his own scythe. As he lay in the grass, bleeding from his cut throat, he was pinned to the ground with his own pitchfork. Again, with this pitchfork thing. Now, circumstantial evidence pointed towards his employer, Alfred Potter, being the killer. Walton was said to have loaned Potter money he couldn't afford to repay. but the strange circumstances certainly gave people pause. The murder of Charles Walton is still unsolved to this day.
We like to say things are like really bad. Things have always been brutal. We've always been violent animals, and bad stuff has always happened. I mean, pitchfork. We're pinning people to the ground with pitchforks.
Yeah,
I mean, that's brutal.
It's absolutely brutal. And the idea was that they can't escape.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just,
and you're gonna slowly die while impaled and stuck to the ground, and and bleeding out from your sliced neck from your own farming tool. I mean, ooh.
It truly is a scene from a horror movie that you're like, wow, glad that doesn't happen in real life. Oh, wait.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if I saw that in a movie, I'd be like, okay, come on.
Overkill. Yeah.
No.
Whoops. Now, luckily, that's all I have for the witch hunt cult theory. So we're going to move on to something else because that's enough for me. Pitchforks to the neck is enough for me.
That's a lot. I'm really hoping she just, ticks somebody off and they just put her in the tree nice and quiet like.
Well, maybe. Other theories are definitely more straightforward. Could Bella have been a prostitute? There is no doubt the woods would have offered a quiet and uninterrupted location for a rendezvous. One possible victim was reported to the police in 1944 by a Birmingham sex worker. In the report, she said that another sex worker called Bella, who worked on the Hagley Road, had disappeared about 3 years previously. So this would have been in 1941. The fact that she was named Bella, and now we have the name Bella, that would certainly match, but again, without any proof or way to validate her identity, they can't say this for sure what it is.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Any of these witnesses should, like her specifically, maybe not, my husband told me the story, she wouldn't know details, but this woman should be able to describe her and say, oh, and her teeth were crossed over. Like, if you know somebody personally, you should be able to give that bit of information.
It wasn't provided in the initial report, and they were never able to locate her, this informant. And you're in a war-torn country.
Yeah.
There's also the very sad theory that Bella was simply a homeless woman living in the woods. Many in the area had been displaced because of bombing and poverty, and her belongings were of poor quality. Was it possible she was simply an impoverished and forgotten soul who kind of fell between the cracks, which is why no one reported her missing?
But still murdered.
Yeah. There is also a published theory that Bella was Roma herself. Remember this gypsy group I was telling you about? And maybe her tribe killed her, or possibly even her husband as they were moving through the woods. Police have rejected this idea because the culture is not known for murdering women. Women would sometimes be banished from the tribe, but not murdered. So this would be outside of something they would expect to see. Interestingly, the chalk graffiti that gave Bella her name has persisted over the decades. Since at least the 1970s, similar graffiti has sporadically appeared on the Hagley obelisk near where the woman's body was discovered. The latest, dating from 1999, was modified from witch, W-Y-C-H, to witch, W-I-T-C-H. So who put Bella in the Wych Elm, clearly favoring the witchcraft theory. The BBC asked a group of researchers in Queen Mary University in London whether statistical reasoning could help solve the mystery of who put Bella in the Wych Elm. Given the number of hypotheses and related pieces of uncertain information, the team settled on using a probabilistic technique called the Bayesian network. Are you familiar with this at all? I had never heard of it.
It's not ringing a bell.
You basically put as much information as you can into a computer system, and it generates the most probable outcome.
For any situation.
For any situation.
Now I want to play with this.
It's really cool.
I want to just do all kinds of crazy things that have actually happened to me in real life and see if
what are the odds?
Yeah, but see if it gets the right response.
The model found it was 99% likely the cause of death was criminal, 97% likely Bella was not British, so she still could have been Dutch. The researchers listed a number of caveats with their methods, but ultimately the report found a 33% likelihood that Jack Maesop was involved in her death. That's the original man that came forward that said he was in the spy ring, that he put her in the tree thinking she was going to wake up, and then he went insane.
Mm.
And there was a 7% chance that it was some intelligence service. It gave the probability that Bella was a spy 25%, and 16% that she was a sex worker. So it's not ruling anything out.
No, but it's not really giving us high probability of any one thing either.
Listen, this is clear as mud, Cynthia.
So something tells me at the end of this, we're still not going to know who put Bella in the witch elm.
Ding, ding. There was hope in 2018 that the mystery of Bella would finally be solved after an expert with experience rebuilding people recreated Bella's features and finally put a face to the name.
Mm.
The photograph was published with the belief it could find a match among a pile of lost memories and photographs buried in an attic. Because at this point, it would be assumed that anyone that knew Bella personally has passed away.
Sure.
So this would be somebody flipping through an old photo album that would say, hey, this old relative resembles this picture of Bella. Unfortunately, genealogical testing is not an option because Bella's skeletal remains, clothing, and the original investigative material have been lost to time.
I was going to ask, can we go back and do some testing? So I can see the items potentially being lost because we see that in current cases.
Yeah.
But how do you lose a body?
Within a decade of her discovery, it was revealed that almost all the evidence in her case had simply just been lost.
But you lose a body?
Uh-huh. Her whole skeleton. We have no idea what it is.
You know what I mean?
It's unfortunate because it does seem like this woman we could have at least traced her origin.
Right.
Right? Like, what country was she even from?
Which would have told us a lot.
Which would have told us a lot.
Potentially.
Absolutely. At least gave us a direction to look.
Sure.
At this point, the case of the woman in the tree remains open, and it's still marked as unsolved. Over the decades, many books have been written with each author explaining their particular theories. In August of 2019, the musical Who Put Bella in the Wych Elm
Okay, come on.
had its first staged workshop.
Wow.
It does follow the true story of the mysterious body found in the wych elm tree in Hagley in the 1940s. The musical explores the different theories of who Bella is and who put her there. If you are interested, you can listen to some of the demo music online. It's actually pretty good.
Okay, so I love a musical, and I love a dark musical. Sweeney Todd, Cabaret, two of my favorite shows of all time.
This one's just not doing it for you.
No. It almost feels like disrespectful. Of course, it's someone's true story.
It's someone's true story. I will say one of the songs, it's the second song on the album, I guess. It's called The Unknown Woman. And it's a very melancholy song, but it's talking about how can someone exist and not leave a trail? Like, someone knows who you are. Somebody's going to come forward. So I didn't listen to the whole thing. I'm just saying the few I listened to seem respectful, but
okay.
It does seem odd.
Odd, yes. And also possibly amazing. You know, as appalled as I pretend to be, it might actually be pretty good. You know what I think? Here's what I think. I don't know. For some reason, my gut is telling me she is a local woman who the prostitute idea could be. I'm not buying into the witchcraft. I'm not really buying into the spy thing. All of that seems a little too fantastical, I think.
Okay.
I think some evil person just put this poor woman in a tree.
You know what's incredible? That obelisk, the Hagley obelisk, that's very close to where she was found. That writing, they keep refreshing it. Like, it's been there for over 10 years now. And it's just this kind of creepy writing. You could find pictures of it. And it just says, who put Bella in the wych elm?
No, but see that, I feel like now that's just people keeping it going.
Probably. And over time, this has kind of become like a ceremonial, like ritual place for those that are interested in dark magic, that believe there was some kind of witchcraft going on there. Like, now
Well, even the change of the spelling to go from which was
Yeah.
correct spelling, to an incorrect spelling of WITCH.
Right.
I see that more people like just, you know what I mean?
Wanting to be
An
more
error.
sensationalistic.
Or making an error, not
making
even
an error.
realizing. Because if you
Right.
had asked me going into this, I would have said it was witch, WITCH.
Especially after looking at that picture.
Right. And that sounds spookier. It like that's I think where most people who don't actually know the history, don't actually know what happened, that's probably where our minds go.
And that was funny, even when you were talking about the musical. I'm like, here's the deal. If somebody had said, hey, there's this kind of dark musical called Who Put Bella in the Wych Elm, you'd be like, oh, great. Like, if you didn't know it was based on a true story, you would think it was like a Sweeney Todd, like just kind of a dark, like spooky show.
Yeah. Or Nancy Drew. There's something in Nancy Drew. Doesn't it kind of sound like the Wych Elm?
Yes.
Doesn't that sound like a Nancy Drew title?
It sounds made up.
Yeah.
It sounds made up. Like I started this, like just a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know for sure that her name is Bella.
No, we don't. In fact, I'm not convinced of anything in this case. I'm not convinced her hand was cut off. I'm not convinced of anything. This one's truly a mystery.
Truly a mystery.
Like, all we really know is there was a woman in a tree.
And I feel like the theories are all over the place. Like, they're not even kind of related.
No, pretty much it's kind of like, so a woman is in a tree. Her hand may or may not have been cut off. It may or may not have been murder, may or may not have been suicide. And we really know nothing. So any potential theory is a potential theory because we know nothing.
Well, and even, this ring that she had, it may or may not have been a wedding ring. We don't even know.
Right. She may or may not have had a baby. She may or may not have been 5 feet, maybe 5'9". We really don't know. I do think we know that, right?
I think that's like the only thing
we know. And that she was female.
And that she was female. We know she had brown hair because that was some of the hair that was on her head still. We know she had a very unusual jaw. That's pretty much it. That's what we know of her. And it makes me very sad. And it makes me sad that they lost her.
Again, we're in the 40s. There's a lot going on. But still, you're going to lose a whole human? She should have been buried or something, right? Like,
I mean, I can see them keeping her somewhere while the investigation was going on, like holding her for someone to come claim her.
So for evidence or for evidence
or for somebody to claim her. But they went up losing her in the process. Now I get it. I mean, you have so many bodies, so much you're processing, so I don't know. I'm not in their shoes.
I mean, of all the things we're going to like really make sure we take care of, I don't know. The human skeleton might be something I'd put, I think I would remember where I put that.
The fact that no one has come forward claiming her makes me sad. And then to not even have respect for her remains after the fact. I just feel like if this really is someone who didn't have loved ones that are speaking up for her, and then even the authorities didn't keep track of her too, like that just makes my heart sad.
Right.
And maybe that's not the case. Maybe she was Dutch. People just assume she was killed in the war, in the war effort. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're in like a spy network.
Sure.
I do think there's a chance for espionage. Maybe that's just because it's a more fun theory, I guess. But I do think there's potential for it. I mean, it was rife,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the timing was right.
Yeah. So that's all I got.
Wow. Well, that's all you got. I mean, we've seen a deviltry. We have seen.
That's right.
Spies. And
yeah,
we've covered it.
Covered it all. We had true crime. We've got some cult activity. Got it.
You name it. We got it.
War. Got it all.
I don't know anything more Oaktober-y than that story.
Well, you want me to go ahead and wrap it up by talking about our branch of hope?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And I will tell you, I have heard this case before, as we talked about at the top of the episode, but I don't think anybody brought the detail that I've never heard all of that detail. So once again, a round of applause for our amazing Stephanie. Stephanie really, she doesn't bring the stuff just because it's interesting. She really makes sure there's something behind it. So.
Oh, that's so nice. Again, women just loving on other women. I actually want to give a little shout out to Coffee in Cases. They covered this case, but it was almost like a monologue, and it was all this like beautiful flowery imagery on the way they told the story, and I actually really loved it.
Oh.
It's very different than the way I said it. I think all of it's very factual as well, but they really had a fun spin on the story. So if you like it, go listen to Coffee and
Oh.
Cases.
Well, I
version
like
2.
them, so I will definitely listen to
Yeah,
their
I really
coverage.
liked, because I do kind of the same as you. I, write, and then I like to go and listen to how others have covered it.
Mhm.
And yeah, just some beautiful writing.
I will definitely check it out.
Yeah. Okay, well, October 2024, we covered 2 haunted doggos at the beginning of the month, and we introduced Best Friends Society. They are doing amazing work trying to find homes for domestic dogs and cats, and their overarching mission, which is to have non-kill shelters across the entire United States. We absolutely love that. So a portion of earnings from our Patreon and sponsors will go directly to Best Friend Society. If you want to donate directly to them, you can find their information on our social media. You can also find it on our webpage. Please send us a message at thedarkoak.com if you have any comments, anything that you want to share. Maybe you got a theory about Bella or just the Wych Elm in general. Tell us what you think about that creepy picture of the tree.
Oh.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna have
weird.
nightmares.
It's weird. Let's see. What else do we have, Cynthia?
I think that's it. Hey, check out our Patreon. We're getting new members in our Patreon. We're having a lot of fun over there. We've almost got a full year's worth of episodes loaded on the
Yeah.
Patreon for the top 2 tiers to enjoy. So check us out over there if you will.
Yeah. And then Cynthia is going to round out Oaktober Fest next week. Tell me about your episode.
Next week, we are going to be talking about the mysterious death of one Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, the king of Halloween himself. I love it. Okay, awesome. And that's like the day before Halloween, right? Because I think Halloween's on Thursday. That will come out on Wednesday. So, yep, I know what I'm doing. Okay,
We will
friends.
get you in that Halloween mood for sure.
Definitely. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye.
Bye-bye.